the same state corrections officer employers that were previously presented by the union's economic witness, Amy McCarthy, and in addition have added several further points of reference to provide a little broader context to our analysis. She presented a group of states that she identified as being large states in the northeast quadrant of the United States, and in prior rounds of testimony and bargaining and arbitration with this bargaining unit, she had defined large as being those states with populations at least 50% that of Pennsylvania. So we applied her same regional geographic criteria and added Indiana, which also has a population more than half that of Pennsylvania's. As another point of reference, we looked at all of the contiguous states surrounding the Commonwealth, which adds to those three that were in her group, giving Delaware, Maryland, and West Virginia as further points of reference. And then finally, we have looked at two states where the Commonwealth is now sending significant numbers of inmates for custody to address overcrowding issues, to get a sense of what the cost factors are in these other states where Pennsylvania inmates are held. In looking at all of these comparison jurisdictions, I would note that there are no perfect twins. Each state has its own economic, fiscal, demographic factors, and in a few slides to come, I'll present a little bit of that context to help interpret the inevitable differences in compensation that we'll find. Even if you have a relevant set of comparison employers to look at, you're never going to, and I wouldn't expect to find that all of those states would pay their corrections officers exactly the same thing. Some are going to pay a little more, some are going to pay a little less, and there are generally reasons for that, so we'll provide some of that context along with the pay comparisons. In terms of the compensation data that we identified, we collected pay schedules, collective bargaining agreements, job descriptions to try to make sure we had accurate information, and followed up with human resources and labor relations professionals at each of these states to try to confirm and verify our data as best as we could. In doing so, we found a very close correlation to the data already presented by the union's economic witness where our groups overlap. For those jurisdictions that we both looked at, the variances between her data and ours were relatively minimal. I've outlined what some of those variances are on slide 17. In one instance, we used a more recent wage schedule. In another instance, we identified a slightly lower starting rate that New Jersey has introduced as a cost containment measure. But overall, the variances, as explained on slide 17, didn't significantly change any of our findings. Turning to slide 18, one other methodological difference in our presentation, just to note, is that we presented compensation through a full 30 years of service. The union witness presented a 25-year progression from base through longevity, and presented averages of the first 20 years and the first 25 years of service. In Pennsylvania, there are additional longevity steps beyond 25 years, so we presented a 30-year range to capture all of those steps rather than truncating the pay schedule at a juncture below the potential maximum here in Pennsylvania. And based on the data runs that we received, there are more than 100 members of the bargaining unit who do have more than 25 years of service, so we thought that additional reference point would be helpful. Turning now to slide 19 again, there are no perfect twins. There are different factors that can help to explain why one employer may pay more than another. And so to give just some of that context, on slide 20, beginning with the contiguous states group, we outline Pennsylvania's income levels, both per capita and median household, median home values across the Commonwealth as an indicator of one of the key drivers for cost of living and affordability to be in a community, and what wage levels are relevant to meeting standards of living. We also included credit ratings as an indicator of fiscal health for each of these communities. And what you see across this group of contiguous states is that Pennsylvania tends to rank a little bit below the midpoint for the group as a whole. We do have higher income levels than West Virginia and then Ohio. We're well below New York, New Jersey, and Maryland, and somewhat below Delaware, typically ranking 5th out of the 7, again, for income and home values, and kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of credit rating. I would note that there's currently a negative outlook on the Commonwealth's credit rating from Moody's based on the erosion of the state's reserves and some of the slow economic growth and pension funding challenges that the Commonwealth faces. But within that context, kind of being a little below the midpoint in terms of wealth and housing costs, we further present on slide 21 some of the findings about the labor market for Pennsylvania as a whole. Slide 21 is not presenting correction officer pay. This is average annual pay for all workers in the Pennsylvania labor market, and you again see that we tend to rank about fifth. We're not as high wage a state, or not a state with the same level of wage earning opportunities that you see in New York or New Jersey, or even Maryland and Delaware. We do have opportunities in general for folks to do a little better than in Ohio or West Virginia. Again, we end up 5th out of the 7 in this contiguous states group. When you next turn to look at corrections officers on slide 22, you see that at maximum, we actually move up the list behind New Jersey, but a little bit ahead of New York, 2 of the higher wealth states, Delaware and Maryland in the middle, West Virginia and Ohio kind of roughly commensurate with their standing in the broader economy. So here we've kind of moved up the rankings in terms of how corrections officers are compensated relative to the overall workforce. Turning to slide 23, you'll see that that's not exactly the same story at every level of the pay progression, consistent with some of the testimony presented by Dr. McCarthy with regard to her grouping of employers. You see that Pennsylvania starts a little slower in the first years of service, a little bit closer to the median in this group, actually a hair below it in the first year of service, if at the lower entry rate of those available for Pennsylvania trainees. But moving up the rankings and increasing by and large in terms of advantage over the midpoint as the corrections officer moves through the series. And on average, over the course of a 20, 25, or 30-year career, in comparison to these other surrounding states, Pennsylvania is above the median in contrast to our position across general economic factors. Next, turning to slide 24, we conduct much the same analysis, but looking at a grouping of large northeastern states. This includes some overlap with the contiguous states group. Again, this is Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, with at least half the population size of Pennsylvania. And you see in this grouping, again, in terms of income levels, in terms of typical home values or mid-range home values across the state, Pennsylvania is a little bit below the median for the group. We rank 5th out of 8 for per capita income, median household income, and home values, kind of around the midpoint, a little above it in terms of credit rating, albeit with that negative outlook. In general, again, New York, New Jersey are ahead of us. Ohio and now Michigan are behind us. Indiana's a little behind us by these economic and demographic factors. Massachusetts and Illinois tend to be a little bit above us. And that rough relationship is reflected in slide 25 in terms of average annual pay levels across the overall labor market in each of these states, where again, we are 5th out of 8, behind New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, ahead of Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. Then in that context, turning to slide 26, much as presented with the contiguous states, when you look at correction officers at maximum base and longevity, again, Pennsylvania moves up the rankings, compensates a little better than you might expect based on our relative economic position. Second overall within this grouping of 8 large Northeast states. Turning to slide 27, where we map out the career progression on a step-by-step basis, again, much as seen in the preceding analysis and in the union witnesses testimony, we start out a little behind in the earlier years of service, not really out of place with our overall economic position, 5th out of 8 in the after 1 year of service, so 6th of 8, kind of in line with that 5th of 8 economic place through the first 8-10 years of service. But as time progresses, we move up the rankings and overall have an average career that's right in line with the Commonwealth's economic position, and that ends at a level above the Commonwealth's economic position. Turning next to slide 28 is just a third point of reference. We took a look at 2 states where Pennsylvania is now sending a significant number of inmates. As of April of this year, Pennsylvania reported more than 1,000 inmates sent for out-of-state custody in each of the Commonwealth of Virginia and the state of Michigan. And looking at these states, we're really right between the two. Virginia is a little bit higher wealth, higher typical home costs. Michigan, a little lower wealth, lower typical home costs. And you see that in slide 29, reflected in wage levels across the overall labor market of each state. Pennsylvanians tend to do just a little bit better than their counterparts in Michigan on average, just a little bit lower than counterparts in Virginia. But when you turn to corrections officers on slide 30, you see that Pennsylvania at maximum base and longevity pays significantly better than either of these 2 other states. And when you turn to slide 31, you see that we are, after those first years of service, averaging over the course of a career well above Michigan, and Virginia does not have a fixed step progression in their pay system. But if you look at the starting and end points for how they do pay across their range, it's pretty clear that Pennsylvania outpays Virginia throughout the corrections career. With that snapshot comparison, and I should have noted that all of these comparisons are as of June 30th of this year. We then take a look at trends over time.